To say it's been a tumultuous weekend in our city, or even the last couple of weeks, would really be a gross understatement. There's a lot that's been happening, and we've been experiencing this in many different ways. Maybe some of you directly, others really through social media or through the mainstream. And you run a bit of a risk when you address these issues directly. Of course, there's always a chance you're going to offend someone, and I think there's almost impossible not to. There's a lot of tensions and a lot of things going on. But not to say anything also seems to be a bit of a statement. As if it doesn't matter, or this doesn't make any difference, or something happening 10 miles from here is somehow a non-event. I don't think that's good either. I'm taking a little bit of courage here from a professor I know from Halifax, David Dean. He's a Catholic theologian at St. Mary's University and also at Atlantic School of Theology. He's a deep soul, and I know him personally. And he's a very honest man. He had posted something that I was reflecting on, and I really thought about his courage in trying to speak, at least address the issue in some way. So I thought I'd do the same. But I want to make something fairly clear right from the very beginning. I am not taking a side. It's wrong to do so, and certainly from a pulpit, I think should never happen. I'm not taking a side. And if you think I should, then maybe you got a little more thinking to do. We all do. And I'm not going to try to explain all of this in 12 minutes, because I can't. It's not possible, and I wouldn't even try. But I read this gospel this week and thought, how in goodness could we speak of this and take this even remotely serious? And not at least address some of what's been happening around us. This is a very high standard that's being placed before us. And I take this seriously. This is my job, is to present this to you in a way that is both credible and possible. So how do we love our enemies and forgive those around us and not hold grudges? Well, I think first thing we need to address is the loss of trust. It's not hard to do. Trust is hard to build, but it's not hard to break down. And it happens in many ways, and it happens in many relationships and in many levels of governance. But there's one particular element I think that is most significant to me is when we begin to assume that we understand or know other people's motives. I think this is at the heart of what the problem is, at least in the gospel and living this out. You can't read my mind. I know that's probably actually God's gift. And I can't read yours. You can see my actions and I can see yours. And yes, there is some interpretation that takes place there, fair, well, and good. But we cannot read each other's minds. And this is true of a pastor in his parish. It's certainly true of spouses. Where I'm getting this from is kind of a comment that was made to us. We're doing an external audit for the Companions of the Cross, and there's some really good guys that are helping us through that. And that's what he said, when they do counseling with couples, like that's one of the very first things they have to do, is try to get people to stop assuming when you did this, you were just trying to. Does that sound familiar? Mm-hmm. I don't know how this actually works, but I'm kind of assuming that's the case. And that's got to go out the window. We can't read other people's minds, and we cannot choose their motives. So then what can we do? Well, I think is to try to live this, is to be an example of it. As I mentioned on my chat on Wednesday, that we're getting closer to a place where we're going to start to open up. I think that's a really good thing. I know it's going to be a bit of a challenge as we move back to the new normal, but within a couple of weeks, we could be relatively free. Really wearing masks and probably receiving on the hand will be the only restrictions that we'll be under. I have to make sure of that. This is ongoing, right? It can change a little bit, but I see that as a very positive thing moving in that direction. And really what Lent is going to become for us this year at least is a part of re-socializing, regathering. It's been so long. If you read the quarterly report, we were just handing that out tonight. You'll see it on the way out. There's a picture there taken right over here of a bunch of people in our church. It's us. And it's almost shocking how close they're sitting to each other. Can you remember that? And it's going to take a little while to get used to that. I think about 40 days. That's my plan. So 40 days of Lent is the 40 days of reopening. And what we're going to do for that collectively as a parish, my staff came up with this. I'd love to say I had credit for it, but I was actually at another meeting. We want to walk a pilgrimage together. What do you do that? How do you do that? We're going to put a big map of Canada on the wall. And the one good thing that came out of all these lockdowns is people have rediscovered walking. Certainly I have. So keep track of your hours and your distances in kilometers. And I'll do the same. And we're going to start tracking the community as we walk together across this country. And we're going to pray for each other as we do so. That make sense? It's going to take a little while, but we're not sure of the math. We'll have to see how many people actually do it. We might get to Vancouver in about 2 weeks, collectively. Then what? We're going to turn around and walk back again. But keep walking and keep praying, and we're going to pray specifically for each region of this country as we walk through it together. Amen? Mm-hmm. But going back to what I'd said earlier, I want to try to do something different in that as well. This is the part I did add. What I'd ask you to do and encourage you to do is something that we're doing this cohort together. This is part of the divine renovation that Father John has been speaking about the last couple of weeks. He talked about vision being the primary thing that drives everything. That's his first week. And it just happens, we do it every 2 weeks, so it's his turn to preach again. He talked about teamwork and leading a team, which is good, but leading out of a team, which is even better. Talked about that as well. Well, now it's my turn, just the way we skipped a week with Father Lawrence. And talk about evangelization. Now, evangelization is a word that's not new to you. We've been talking about it forever. But how do you do it? And here's the weird part. I get called in, I get asked to be like an expert on evangelization. And a lot of times we have to start even by defining it. What do you mean by that? And what the video challenged us to do is kind of interesting. This is the teaching this week, is that all of us should, certainly the pastors, starting with me, should have at least 3 to 5 relationships in my life of people who are not part of my Catholic bubble. I'm going to say that again because I didn't get much of a reaction. So at least 3 to 5 people who are not part of my Catholic bubble. Ooh. But do you see the significance of that? I go to these diocesan meetings and all these clerics get together and we talk about what we need to bring people to Christ. But all of us are in this kind of Catholic world where everybody in my life basically is here as a faith element. Now, when I was doing sailing, that was the case. I was put down at the marina, and I met people there. And so there are ways of doing this, but beyond pumping gas at a gas station or going to a grocery store, starting to make intentional efforts to meet people that are outside of our bubble. And so let's go back to that walk. Remember the walk going across Canada? And we're going to have a map, and we're going to have a pin, and we'll make the line. Ask somebody to walk with you. But not your best friend, not someone you already know. Someone you don't know very well, and you don't know their whole story. It's the neighbor across the street. Maybe they have grandkids. Maybe, the person down the road or the person that lives next to you in an apartment. Talk about your hip medication, or I don't care what you talk about. Well, am I supposed to convince them to believe in Jesus? No. Well, do I have to invite them to an Alpha? Well, if they ask about Alpha, I'd certainly sign them up. But the point of it is to walk with them and spend time with them and get to know somebody else who you don't know already. See, I'm not asking you to find somebody who's diametrically opposed to you or someone you already feel an empathy or difficulty with. We'll save that for later. Let's just get to know somebody else. And let's walk with them and break down some of these barriers, build up some trust, and try to reestablish what we're trying to do here, which is represent the peace and love that is Jesus Christ. I don't think it's going to solve all the problems in the world, but I think it's a good start. And if nobody else is willing to do it, I think we need to be. And I'd like to think as Christians and disciples and followers of Christ, we should be the first ones to do it. Amen?
Amen.
So that's my prayer for you. as we start this journey together, both of reopening, re-envisioning, and to a certain degree, kind of rediscovering what it is to be a Catholic and a Christian, that we'll do it together. We'll do it in faith, and we'll do it at the service of others.